The past holds many secrets, and we're here to uncover them. Join us. About 40 kilometers south of Cairo, there are two of the most stunning pyramids ever built. This is where King constructed two groundbreaking monuments, considered by many to be the first true pyramids. These structures are key to understanding how pyramid construction evolved. To the south, you'll find the bent pyramid with its strange angle. Look at it. Even with the bend, it's beautiful. This pyramid is one of a kind. Nearby is the Red Pyramid, possibly the first pyramid with a perfect triangular shape sloping smoothly all the way to the top. It's almost flawless. Both pyramids are believed to have been built by founder of Egypt's 4th dynasty and father of the famous Khufu. The techniques used in building these pyramids were likely referenced by all the pharaohs who came after him. To truly solve the mystery and understand forward-thinking approach, he's considered ancient Egypt's greatest builder. Archaeologists have been authorized to scan both pyramids from the air. They're using advanced tools to create highly accurate three-dimensional digital models of the monuments using thousands of aerial photos. A special algorithm stitches the photos together to recreate the geometry they observed on site. Thanks to photogrammetry, we can now clearly see structural flaws and hidden details for the first time. These two very different pyramids continue to baffle Egyptologists. For the first time ever, a few of them have been granted special access to explore inside one of these pyramids, Pyramid B at Dashur. It's a dream come true. With drones and three-dimensional imaging, this technology is helping to unlock the secrets of the red and bent pyramids. Leading archaeologists and Egyptologists from the United States, Egypt, and Europe have teamed up to tackle the final mysteries of Dashur. Welcome to Archaeology 2.0. We're leaving Cairo and heading deep into the desert to uncover one of ancient Egypt's greatest treasures. Just 40 kilometers south of the city lies a breathtaking site with two major structures built over 4,500 years ago. These pyramids are the missing link that's helping researchers better understand how ancient builders created such massive stone monuments. In fact, Father Khufu wanted to revolutionize building techniques. When we arrive at the site, there's absolutely nothing around. It's just desert. And then, suddenly, these two pyramids rise from the sand. No one had been here before. He chose this untouched place to make his mark, where no other pharaoh had left a legacy. It was the perfect site for a grand architectural project that would change everything. He was planning more than just a building. He was starting a revolution, and not just architectural, but ideological too. His designs were bold. The angle of the bent pyramid alone shows how the Egyptians began experimenting at the start of the 4th dynasty, trying to build a true pyramid for the first time. It was unlike anything else. At Dashur, he built the Red Pyramid, a perfect example of the triangle-shaped pyramids we picture today, and the Bent Pyramid, with its unique, mysterious shape. Built around 2500 BCE, these two pyramids stand like sisters, just about a kilometer apart, each about 105 meters tall, roughly the height of a 42-story building. To figure out how the architects began this massive project, the Egyptian authorities gave special permission for aerial surveys. For the first time, drones are flying more than 500 meters above the Dashur funerary complex to reveal its full scale. An unprecedented scientific mission is underway to solve the mystery of these pyramids and understand how they managed to build them. The plan: fly around the pyramid several times, take about 1,000 photos, then go inside and scan the chambers and burial areas. Tens of thousands of images will be collected and fed into a computer to build a complete three-dimensional model of the pyramid. This method, called photogrammetry, can show things the human eye can't see, possibly revealing the final secrets of these ancient structures. Once all the photos are taken, an algorithm will automatically analyze and cross-reference them to reconstruct the pyramid's geometry in 3 dimensions. Like a CT scan, experts are using drones to cover the whole site. Fly the drone lower. Okay, a bit more to the right. Perfect. To Egyptologists and researchers, this new tech is incredible. The work being done today could become invaluable in 10, 20, or even 50 years because monuments like these slowly deteriorate and fade with time. It looks like photogrammetry lets us capture a complete image of these pyramids from every angle, for future generations. When used properly, this digital technology can help us run important analyses. After weeks of hard work, experts will be able to provide initial data. And maybe, just maybe, these results will help us unlock the final secrets of these mysterious pyramids and understand how the bent pyramid and the red pyramid in Dashur were built, inside and out. But while we wait for the photogrammetry results, a closer look at the two Dashur pyramids already clearly shows that he was aiming for a total architectural revolution. According to ancient Egyptian beliefs, pyramids were meant to help the pharaoh reach eternal life. But these architects wanted to build something totally new. To understand what he was trying to do in Dashur, we spoke with Mark Lehner, an American archaeologist who has dedicated his life to studying the pyramids. He didn't want to build using the old step pyramid method anymore. He wanted a true pyramid. Maybe because solar worship was becoming more influential in the royal family? He may have wanted to become one with the sun, so a true pyramid would act like a monument to the sun's rays, while his body would be buried underground. Up until then, predecessors had built step pyramids, kind of like giant staircases reaching toward the sky. Those architects had mastered tomb design, but now the Egyptians were trying something totally different. It's almost like he launched his own R&D program to build the perfect pyramid. The bent and red pyramids were pioneers, early experiments in creating the classic pyramid shape we all picture today. And it's clear they were still figuring it out, how to build it, what it should look like. His engineers were trying to build a giant pyramid in a completely new way, no more stair-step structures. But how did they come up with the idea of a triangle? How did they figure out how to make a building shaped like a sunbeam pointing to the sky? It seems like they started with a very steep angle, around 60 degrees. Nobody really knew yet what a true pyramid should look like. So they started with what's believed to be a smaller pyramid at a sharp 60-degree angle. But the steep angle proved too difficult. The pyramid had to look like a sun ray reaching into the heavens. During the excavations, Egyptologists found evidence of that steep 60-degree angle, which suggests Dashur was basically a testing ground. This is where ancient Egyptian architects tried to build the triangular pyramids we see today at Giza. They began with the idea that all sides of the pyramid should be equal to create a perfect triangle. But when they tried that with the bent pyramid, they ran into problems. They didn't even fully understand what was going wrong, because it turns out building a true triangle is really hard. To figure out what went wrong, they needed to study the digital model created from months of photogrammetry work. And now it's finally ready. Computers have analyzed thousands of drone photos to generate a full three-dimensional model of the bent pyramid. Thanks to this photogrammetry, Frank Monnier, an ancient Egypt specialist, discovered some construction flaws that are obvious right away. For the first time ever, we can clearly see these issues. If we zoom in on the top part, we see that the stone foundations look like waves. Some blocks are tilted at sharp angles to make up for the unevenness of the ones next to them. Nothing is straight. The photogrammetry shows us that these stones were laid in a rush, meaning the builders were just trying to finish as quickly as possible. It also lets us see the fine details in the top stone layers, stones that match what we see at the pyramid's base. The drone footage helps explain for the first time why the structure may have started to collapse. We can see, for example, very tall blocks next to piles of shorter blocks, almost like several teams were working separately and trying to fix height differences on the fly. To find more clues about this instability, archaeologists also examined the ground the pyramid was built on. They now believe the foundations weren't strong enough. Instead of building directly on solid bedrock, they started on a surface of desert clay and gravel. The evidence suggests the pyramid began to shift and crack over time. Even though the surface may look solid, underneath there's a thick layer of sand, so the ground moves. That's a nightmare for any engineer. They hadn't built a solid base to support the pyramid, and unfortunately, the bent pyramid was built on land that just wasn't stable enough. The soil here wasn't very solid, and during construction, serious stability issues started to show up. The only solution left was to make the pyramid's base wider so the foundation would cover more ground. So the engineers decided to wrap the pyramid with a sort of outer shell, originally built at a 60-degree angle. This new layer, the lower part, was built at a shallower angle of about 54 to 55 degrees. That made the pyramid shorter and wider. Basically, the Egyptian architects added a new outer layer around the original core with a gentler slope. Thanks to three-dimensional reconstruction, we were able to calculate the new angle, about 54 degrees, which is much less steep. But even with this fix, the pyramid wasn't stable. The architects' plan to reinforce the structure didn't really work. In fact, it made things worse. As they added the new layer to widen the base, once they reached halfway up the pyramid, that outer layer began to slide slightly. Despite their efforts, the architects started noticing big cracks forming all over the pyramid. It was a disaster. The whole structure was at risk of collapsing. One archaeologist said he was always struck by this massive crack that cuts right through the outer shell, and it even seems to run through the original core structure. These cracks are clearly visible in the three-dimensional visualizations. Even after reducing the angle to 54 degrees, the pyramid continued to deteriorate. Excavations show that the architects were planning to reinforce it even further, but when it reached 47 meters in height, they realized they couldn't keep adding more weight. So, they made a bold and very practical decision. They changed the design halfway through construction. At around 47 meters above ground, they altered the slope again, this time down to 43 degrees. That's the shape we see today. Because of the deep cracks and the threat of collapse, the builders had to think fast. Even though the original idea was to make a perfect triangular pyramid, they changed course mid-project. That decision allowed them to finish the pyramid faster, though it meant the perfect triangle shape was gone. You can clearly see the shift in slope in the images. There's a line dividing the steeper lower half from the gentler upper section. The digital model helps us visualize exactly where the structure started to fail. Photogrammetry confirmed the 43-degree angle was used to complete the pyramid more safely. Some Egyptologists think the bent shape was planned from the beginning, but most evidence says otherwise. Personally, I don't think the bend was intentional. Problems just kept piling up and they adjusted the design to save the project. Finishing the pyramid with the upper angle we see now was probably their only option. It no longer looks like a sunbeam shooting into the sky, but the unique bent shape shows just how adaptable the Egyptian architects were. With the help of three-dimensional images, it's clear they focused on key parts of the pyramid to make it as stable and clean-looking as possible. If you look at the top, you'll see they carefully leveled the surfaces and kept the edges straight. So despite all the issues, they made sure the structure wouldn't collapse. They also figured out they didn't need a perfectly flat foundation as long as the overall structure was balanced. And even though the shape turned out strange, the calculations were spot on because the bent pyramid is still standing after 4,500 years. That's impressive. It may look unusual, but it's also majestic. Interestingly, the builders themselves didn't seem fully satisfied with the result. There's evidence they considered the pyramid unstable, so they moved on to a new project. They started another pyramid not far from this one, just about 1 kilometer away. This time, though, the engineers seemed to know exactly what they were doing. They had a clear vision and were determined to avoid the mistakes made with the bent pyramid, especially the cracking. The new project, known today as the Red Pyramid, had the same goals and same shape as before, but this time they used proven techniques. Probably because of all the stability problems with the bent pyramid, they applied what they learned when building the Red Pyramid. The architects still wanted to make a triangular pyramid, but now one with smooth, straight sides. That means the edges follow a single clean line, without any angle changes like the bend in the earlier design. They started by using the bent pyramid's blueprints, but corrected their previous mistakes. First and most important, the foundation. This time, they didn't build directly on sand. Unlike the bent pyramid, the Red Pyramid doesn't sit on loose ground. The pyramid was built on a solid, pre-prepared foundation, and the result was a much more even, stable structure, as confirmed by photogrammetry. Thanks to three-dimensional imagery, we discovered that the stones were arranged in a far more orderly way. Each stone in the first layer was placed directly on the rock, on firm ground. From there, the pyramid was built layer by layer in horizontal sections. The builders applied all the experience they had gained from earlier projects to create a monument worthy of the pharaoh. This time, the base was square, larger, and much more stable, each side measuring 219 meters. One of the earlier problems they had with the bent pyramid was that its original 60-degree angle was way too steep, which made the structure unstable. For the red pyramid, the architects decided to stick with the same angle they had used to finish the bent pyramid, around 43 degrees. Now that they had some experience, they knew this angle worked well. They started the red pyramid with an angle of 43 degrees and maintained it throughout construction, moving slightly north from the bent pyramid's location. And finally, they succeeded in building the first truly stable pyramid. No slipping, no cracking. Digital technology helped confirm all of this. From over 5,100 meters above the ground, you can clearly see the clean triangular shape. When viewed from the air, the red pyramid displays a perfection that the bent pyramid lacks. It's important to remember, the red pyramid is the oldest known pyramid with smooth sides. It was the first successful pyramid of its kind, a massive, sandy-colored giant still standing today. At 105 meters tall, it's the third tallest pyramid in Egypt. So the red pyramid became the first true triangular pyramid with smooth, flat sides. Still, some experts argue it isn't perfect. Its 43-degree angle is relatively shallow, which makes it look like it's sagging under its own weight. Could that mean the red pyramid isn't as flawless as we think? There are actually similarities between the red pyramid and the bent pyramid, possibly even structural ones. When we look closely at their shapes using photogrammetry, they seem to have the same dimensions. If you overlay the two pyramids in a three-dimensional model, the bent pyramid would fit neatly inside the red pyramid. The bent pyramid's upper section, built at 43 degrees, matches the red pyramid's angle exactly. So, if both pyramids share these features, could the bent pyramid really be the result of construction mistakes? Was it actually a failed prototype? To investigate this, researchers examined the interior of the bent pyramid, an area usually closed off to the public. Egyptologist Mark Lehner, who has studied ancient Egypt for over 40 years, was finally allowed inside for the first time in his life. "This is a dream come true," he said as he crawled inside. After 20 minutes of squeezing through tight tunnels, Lehner finally reached the pyramid's inner chamber, the burial chamber, located deep in the heart of the monument. It's a high, multi-level room, visible in three-dimensional scans. He climbed all the way up inside the chamber, where the first thing that caught his eye was the enormous wooden beams. "Incredible," he said. "These cedar logs from Lebanon are still in place, supporting the walls." The wood is in remarkably good condition, despite being over 4,500 years old. But despite this amazing discovery, it's also clear that the architects faced big challenges when building the vault and the walls, just like they did with the pyramid's outer shell. Even while bats flew around, Lehner pointed out individual blocks and crossbeams. "You can see there's a support beam here," he said. "Were these added to reinforce the structure?" When you look at the vault, it makes sense to wonder if the wood was used to prevent a collapse. The upper chamber is in poor shape. For a long time, people believed the wooden logs were added later to support the structure, but that theory doesn't really hold up. So, if the wood wasn't meant to reinforce the pyramid, why is it there? To find answers, archaeologists used a digital three-dimensional model of the bent pyramid's interior. With this tool, it's easy to explore the burial chamber in full 360-degree detail without any issues from lighting or access. The cedar logs, cut by the Egyptians themselves, were clearly placed in specific spots to help with construction, not support. If you removed the beams, the structure wouldn't collapse, so they weren't meant as reinforcement. Still, damage inside the bent pyramid's burial chamber is obvious. Thanks to the three-dimensional imaging, researchers can now study it like an X-ray and determine whether the damage was just part of a bigger structural issue. Because of earlier construction flaws, this new visualization method allows researchers to uncover new insights. First of all, the room itself is shaped like a pyramid. Think about it. What kind of shape would you give to a chamber inside a pyramid? What we're seeing here is an internal space that mirrors the pyramid's design, like a negative of the pyramid. So the ancient Egyptians didn't just aim to give the outside a triangular form, they tried to shape the inside the same way. But once again, the internal shape isn't perfect. Thanks to modern imaging, we can clearly see what really happened. The structure appears to be trying to balance itself. Stones are cracking and falling, and a dome-like shape is forming. This is similar to what happens in natural caves. We can also see that the walls were recarved in some areas, but not everywhere, indicating the damage came from natural structural issues, not from intentional redesign. This change in the structure made the chamber weaker. When looking at the three-dimensional scan, it seems the architects knew exactly what they were trying to build. It's like being inside a cave. Everything collapsed. But that wasn't due to poor craftsmanship. The issue was with the materials they used. The digital reconstruction proves that the bent pyramid didn't just suffer from external building problems, but also had internal structural weaknesses. The limestone inside the burial chamber is clearly eroded, so studying the inside of the bent pyramid supports the idea that it was a failed attempt, and that the red pyramid was the successful version for Pharaoh. To confirm this theory, archaeologists also decided to investigate the inside of the red pyramid, which from the outside looks nearly perfect. But does the interior match that perfection? Egyptologist Vasile takes us inside. The first observation: the three chambers inside the red pyramid are much larger. More importantly, the burial chamber has a flawless ceiling. There's a beautiful vaulted structure with no support beams, rising about 18 meters high. The ceiling is built using a perfect technique like an inverted staircase, which experts call a corbelled vault. It's built so that the walls gradually angle inward, creating a pointed top that supports the entire structure. Thanks to photogrammetry, we can now explore beneath the pyramid, and for the first time, see how the internal chambers look from the outside. Unlike the bent pyramid, there are no signs of uncertainty or last-minute changes in design. Everything here is clean, precise, almost as if it were carved with a laser. Even the base chamber ceiling is perfectly constructed. We also noticed that the triangular shape of the exterior is reflected inside the chambers as well. There are no signs of structural failure or rushed repairs. The red pyramid is so perfect that some experts find it hard to believe pyramids weren't planned with this result in mind all along. Still, even the so-called perfect red pyramid has a relatively low angle of 43 degrees, which gives it a kind of squat, unusual look, almost like it's compressed under its own weight. Another strange contradiction. The red pyramid's outer casing is almost completely gone, while the bent pyramid, often considered a failure, still retains about 70% of its original outer casing. That seems odd, especially if the bent pyramid was a flawed design. Some Egyptologists believe that this remaining casing is actually proof that the bent pyramid wasn't a failure at all. In fact, it may be the best preserved pyramid in Egypt. The stones are so well fitted that for thousands of years, people couldn't even remove them, no matter how hard they tried. So, an imperfect pyramid still continues to amaze us. Both structures have stood the test of time and have resisted looters better than others. Why? Because the architects used a special building technique, placing the stones at a slight inward angle rather than laying them flat and horizontal. This angled method, visible thanks to modern imaging, might have been their way of improving stability, like a slanted retaining wall. Clearly, they were experimenting with new techniques. Interestingly, this angled stone method was not used in the red pyramid, even though it's more stable. Perhaps they realized it wasn't necessary by then. Subscribe and explore the forgotten past with us. Like, share, and support the journey to uncover the truth buried in the ruins. See you next time on the next